Welcome, everyone, to this week's Elemental Evolution. I hope you guys have all had a great week. This weekend it's a great time for everyone to kind of regroup and take a look at things with the way that the planetary system is coming into play and the way that I think that the universe and the planet itself is waking up. And to help us introduce that and maybe give us a little deeper understanding, I hope you all help me welcome Max Igan. Hi there.
Hi, Sherri. Nice to be on, darling. Thanks for asking me on the show. Pleasure to come and talk to you.
I am so excited about having you with me today. I have read so much of your material and watched several of your videos and really admire the way that you break things apart. And although it seems like maybe people have the perception that you have a lot of opinions, it seemed more to me that you were more about deciphering opinions, and that intrigues me a lot.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not really about opinions. It's about perspective. All I'm really doing is offering a perspective on the information that I've had come to me and sort of offering it for humble consideration. It's not really an opinion. It's just a perspective on how some of this stuff may be looked at. You know, the danger in opinions, of course, excuse me, is I find a lot of people, even especially when looking at things like ancient history and the ancient past, which is something I think you wanted to touch on as well, is that when people look at this stuff, they're basically looking at books which are basically opinions that have been formed by other people, often by other books that they've read, which are opinions by other people, and we end up just muddying the water by offering our opinion on other people's opinions, is what it kind of ends up being. So I've tried to take a more of a hands-off approach and kind of step back and look at things and just put them in perspective and look at it more as a jigsaw puzzle and try to see how the pieces fit together. And I found that to be far more beneficial to kind of look at it that way. And also not to lock myself in any belief system with any of the things I'm researching as well. You know, we look at ancient history and the ancient past, and we try to figure out how we got here. We find certain things that resonate with us. We lock ourselves into this belief system, and then everything else we research from that point has to be identified via that belief system. And I think this is a dangerous thing to do. I think people should consider everything but believe nothing. You know, I mean, all of it should be open. Well, everything should be open for consideration, but you've got to be careful what you believe, because life is an ongoing journey and it's all about the path. And there's going to be new things that come into your journey and onto your path all the time, which may conflict with what you believe if you've chosen to put a belief system in place rather than a consideration system in place. You know what I mean?
I do, and I love that, because I think that that's one of the things, again, about some of the reading that I just did of yours on the ancient civilizations, just kind of jumping right in there, is that it seems that happens a lot, that we get a piece of information and grip onto it as if it is the only truth, or it gives maybe that definition that people are looking for. Oh, this is where we come from, this is how it happened, even if it doesn't really make sense. I think that that's where maybe analyzing it and perception, again, are taking us into a different level, because you started breaking things down, and it wasn't hard reading. It's like, it seemed to me it was very common sense.
Well, yeah, and I think that's the approach we need to have, you know, like it's very difficult to know what really happened in the past. And even with some of the stuff that I wrote in that book, I mean, I certainly had belief systems in place when I wrote that book. There's things that you'll find near the end of that book, certain conclusions that I came to and perspectives that I offered that I kind of disagree with now. Like, I kind of agree with the first part of the book. In the first part of the book, I was simply putting civilization out there and putting history out there and saying, well, look, there's all of this stuff lying around the planet which tells a completely different story to what we're being told about history. And this would indicate that, you know, we've been lied to and there is a massive cover-up. So the question is, why are they covering up history? Why are they hiding things from us? And in the latter part of the book, I started to take on certain people's research and speculate on what the path might be and what the solution might be from that point. Looking back at that now, I disagree with some of the research that those people that I featured in the book came up with. I don't agree with all of the ideas of people such as Zecharia Sitchin, for example. I featured a lot of his work in the book as well, because that was where my research was going at the time. But ultimately, the key to the book and the purpose of the book was basically to explain that nothing that we've been told so far is true. There's all of this stuff lying around the planet that tells a completely different story. So why have they done this? And, of course, when you start looking at that and you start questioning why they would cover up history, the question is, why is there a cover-up at all, and what else are they covering up? And you start to sort of get into it. See, with what we do now, with even doing these radio shows and speculating on where the government may be going and what this whole system is really doing to us, my pathway, my doorway into that world was basically ancient history, because I began to question why we weren't being told the truth about ancient history, which then led me to question everything else. And all of the research kind of dovetails into each other, really. It doesn't matter which path you go down. It doesn't matter whether your interest is ancient history or UFOs or government cover-ups or anything. It all kind of dovetails into the same thing eventually. And you have to look at all of the fields in order to really understand what's going on.
So I want to take this conversation into a little deeper level that, and you let me know if you're comfortable with that, and if you're not, we can go a different way. But one of the things that I had read or heard you say, and you're talking about energy and the flow of energy. And when you're looking at the planet right now and you're looking at the conspiracies, the cover-up, and all of these things, do you see a relation within the human energy body and the reflection of what we are seeing as a reality?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's why we're being fed this fear reality all the time through our media. Everything's all about fear, and it's about disempowerment, and that's why we have this fearful, disempowered reality. Right. But I think it's also necessary in a way. I think the more steps the powers that believe they be, the ruling cacistocracy, if you will, the more they attempt to lock us down and control things, the more people they're waking up by default. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. They cannot stop human consciousness from waking up and rediscovering itself. It's just not going to happen. They can't do it. But they are attempting to. But because we believe that we're disempowered, we've got this disempowered world at the moment. But I think the more people lose, the more powerful they become. The more you take away from people to the point where they've got nothing left to lose, then they become fully empowered. So it doesn't matter how much you take away from people, eventually humanity will rise to the occasion. I really do believe this. And I think it's all necessary as well. I think without the dark, we can't have the light. You know, if we weren't faced with this incredible Leviathan and this crisis that this world is in, that all the species on this earth are facing, if we weren't faced with this crisis, it wouldn't give us the opportunity for growth. It wouldn't give us the opportunity to step into who and what we are and what we were born to be. You know, if you're just going through life and living in abundance and everything was perfect, where would you go? You know, you would eventually decay as a society and as a species, I think. And I think, Well, yeah, and I think we have an incredible potential for creation. We do. We have a creative potential that is absolutely off the charts. We can't even imagine what our creative potential could be. Even when you start looking at science and quantum physics and the measurement problem and all these things, how you know you create atoms by observing them, and how there's no real matter, and all of this is a projection of consciousness anyway. So there's so
and that's, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but that's what fascinated me so much about some of the writing that you had, because in my limited opinion, I'm not going to claim to have the knowledge that you do by any means, but I see things in a way that you were speaking of with the energy flow that flows through the body, the planet, the universe. It's the creative structure, and it has both. It's not just all of, like what you were saying, this love and light that is floating through this vibrational wave that's waking people up. It takes both. And so it's coming into this place of balance, I think, of maybe understanding that, I guess, all of this conspiracy, I'm not saying that any of it is not true, because it probably is all true, and everything has a purpose as far as there seems to be so many cover-ups and so many things. But when I'm working with individuals and people, I'm seeing the same thing within them. It's almost like everyone's walking around like the government, but not really. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like everything is such a reflection as to people walking around holding things about themselves that they don't want anybody to know, projecting out this and that, you know, pretending to be a certain way so that we can fall into society, even if we're pretending to be a light worker. Yeah,
well, the problem is that most people have a failure in how to process light. Most people don't understand what light is. You know, people look at negative information and they view it as negative. They look at bad stuff that's going on, they see this as negative information when really it's just light. All information is light. When you look at a room, when you walk into a room, if the room is dark, you can take a candle or shine a light in there and you can see the room. The room becomes illuminated. Why? And what happens then? You've got information about the room, which gives you information and knowledge of your environment, because that's what it is. It's just processing that light. It's knowledge. Light is knowledge. It's information. You look at a tree, you look at a person, what you're seeing is a reflection of light of that tree, of that person. It's information you're getting about that tree or that person, so you can see them and visualize them and communicate with them. It's light. All information is light. When people get information that it may refer to something dark, something they don't want to look at, they won't look at it, they won't process it because they view it as dark or negative, when really it's just light, and it's their failure to process that particular form of light, because it's just information, and all information is light, and light is information.
And do you think that the failure is the wounding? I mean, I ask this because...
It's the wounding, and it's also the fact that we're not in a state of love. When you say love and light is true, but you've got to understand what love is and what light is. Light is information, and love is not fear. That's what love is. It's the opposite polarity of fear. It isn't this warm, fuzzy sensation. It can be that. It can be this warm, fuzzy sensation you have for an animal or a child or whatever, but it's also removing the fear of being who you are and being able to look at what's around you and process it properly and see the opportunities that it provides for you. That's how you process light, and you do that by being in a state of love, which is not fear. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
It's understanding how the polarities work and understanding how the energy flow works with people and with your environment as well. We do manifest our environment, and it's all an energy exchange. Everything is energy exchange. And too often people are disconnected from source. They're disconnected from the true knowledge of themselves, and so their most readily available source of energy is other people. So we're going to mess up other people's days and harvest their energy from them, because that's the only way we know how to get through society, and that's what our society has trained us to do and to be. So it's no wonder that we're in the state that we're in. And then people are looking for enlightenment through it all, but they don't understand what enlightenment is. Enlightenment is a very destructive process. It is a falling away of all of the misinformation and all the disinformation you have and seeing things clearly. It's very painful and it's not pretty. It's nothing about being better or being happier or anything like that. It's seeing things as they are. That is true enlightenment. It's understanding how to process all forms of light and seeing things as they are and being okay with that and seeing the opportunity that it gives you for growth and for human expansion. And that's what this experiment is. I really do believe this. I feel it anyway. This is my perspective of it.
I think you're right. I mean, I think that's. I wrote something similar, basically stating that I feel that even using the term Christ-like vibration, to me, is exactly what you're saying. It's the lack of judgment, but the lack of judgment of self and of others. And when I'm saying that, I'm not talking about determining or losing morality. I'm talking about what you're saying as far as it's just light, and not being so wrapped up in a story and the traumas that have happened to us that are causing whatever the reflection is that's constantly being bounced off of whatever the holding within the being is. I guess that's kind of where I'm questioning if you think that the government and these conspiracy things are they being cleared, and are things coming into balance as the human race is, or is it the other way around? Is it in balance, or is it one or the other?
Well, it's a little bit out of balance at the moment, but I think it's coming back into balance. I mean, you commented earlier that you believe the Earth to be waking up, the planet to be waking up. I would concur with that. I do fully feel that. I've felt that in meditation. I've felt that in ceremony. I've had experiences which would tend to me to concur that is exactly what's happening. And certain people are waking up during the process. Our circuitry is being accessed by the mother that we reside upon. Right. In my understanding of this Earth is a living, conscious entity itself.
Mine as well.
This is just simply what I feel. So I think that it's all part of the process. At the moment, things are a little bit out of balance, and it's going to be down to what we do about it and what our opportunities are, whether we seize these opportunities. And really all we have to do is remember our perfection, remember who and what we are. Remember what we're dealing with is a fiction. It's just a group of psychopaths who basically maneuver themselves into a position of power, and they're doing some pretty out-of-control things. But ultimately they're manipulating us in order to do it. And it's our constant division and our willingness to fight and argue amongst ourselves and pretend that our way is the only way to get out of this. Lock ourselves into belief systems again is what it's about. We lock ourselves into a belief system, then we force it on everybody else. This is what all the wars have been about. This is what all the politics is about. Everything. It's all about my belief and that you should do what I say. And that's what everybody's doing. That's what we've done through history. And I think we're sort of outgrowing that now. And I think we're realizing that this is an opportunity for human growth. It is an opportunity for expansion. But if we don't embrace that and we don't, we're not willing to put all our stuff down with each other and stop judging each other. But even when you say, like, don't judge people and put down the judgment, there's a certain new age understanding that's been applied to this as well. Where you might see, a couple fighting, for example, some guy's beating up a woman or whatever, or some woman's beating up a guy, whatever. And you say, oh, well, I'm not going to judge. That's their karma. But what about if you're observing this, then you're involved in it. And what if it's an opportunity for you to diffuse that situation? And that's not through judgment. It's realizing that the person committing the act, the violent act, is as much a victim as the person being beaten. Both of these people are victims, but you can go and diffuse the situation without judging either one as being in the wrong. You know what I'm saying? You can see that as an opportunity for yourself, because I believe people say, oh, you don't give that attention, where intention goes, energy flows, all this sort of stuff. But if you're seeing this and you're witnessing this, then you're involved in it. And what is your karma if you allow that to continue without going in there and non-judgmentally diffusing the situation? And look at this on a global level as well. And on a state level, look at everything. Look at everything we're doing. We're turning a blind eye to it because we're saying, oh, well, that's their karma, that's their stuff. And it's all of this new age rubbish. We're failing to process light, and we're failing to realize that simply by observing it, you are involved in it. Just looking at the double slit experiment, it changes when the scientist observes it. Things change. When you have knowledge of something, it's because you're supposed to be involved in it. Otherwise, you wouldn't have knowledge of it to begin with. So I think it's important for us to look at things from that perspective.
I love that you said that, because that's one of I had this almost not an argument, but this discussion with somebody, and the issue that they brought up is they said, well, if I'm in a parking lot somewhere and someone scratches my car, that has nothing to do with me. And in my mind, at that moment, I realized that everything, no matter what, is, if it is in our consciousness, if it is brought to our attention, it is about us. It is something I feel that there's no real coincidence. There's no real, things don't just happen for no reason. Everything that is going on has purpose. And I even believe that the conspiracies and the hiding, one of the questions that I had for you is, do you believe that this civilization, the human race, is prepared for the truth?
I think we are to a great deal. Maybe a lot of people aren't, but I think we're getting to a point where I think we are. I think people can handle the truth. I don't think the human race is as frail as we're told that it is. Perhaps there's certain sections that may freak out if they found out what the truth is. But again, what is the truth? The only thing I can really identify as truth is my own body and that which I know myself. The rest of it I'm still figuring out. I'm actually still figuring out the consciousness that inhabits my body as well. But, ultimately, the world is run by some very insane people. You've just got to look around you to see that that's true. The question is, how do we establish the freedom to find out what the real truth is? Because there's so many versions of truth according to what people have researched and what people choose to believe. Like I said, I choose to believe nothing. I choose to consider everything but to believe nothing. And I won't know what the truth is, I don't believe, until I leave this plane, unless we can establish freedom somewhere during this existence. But I think that should be the focus, is to realize what we've got here and the potential that we've got for freedom. I think we have a huge potential for freedom for the first time ever in the human experience. I can't look back and find anywhere that the human race has been free. Maybe little pockets of freedom here and there, some little village living in the jungle somewhere, but to have the technology that we've got and the abilities that we've got now and to have the world been made so small and the connectivity that we've got now, and to have freedom to go along with it, would be an incredible thing. And I think that with the connectivity we've got, with the internet and the things that we've got now, the technology we've got, it gives us the ability to really know what's going on as far as the political situation, the social situation, and the economic situation, and how this society is actually structured. It gives us, it lays it all bare. It lays the control mechanism bare enough for all to see it now. And this gives us an opportunity to see how we are controlled, how we are enslaved, and how we are manipulated. And it gives us an opportunity to change it. It's just figuring out how to do that. And I firmly believe that the first step is empowerment of the individual. If you can help people rediscover what they are themselves, and help them realize the actual power they have, the inherent power for creation that they have within them. Everything, everybody, it's got so much potential. If you can help people understand this on the ground and get that little spark glowing in them, then awakening comes from that point. Because the real awakening, it has to be realized. You can't tell anybody the truth. People have to discover the truth for themselves. The only truth I can really discover at the moment, like I said, is myself, and the fact that we live in a slavery system. We're very, very controlled, and we don't realize it to a great extent, generally speaking. We're not free to experience ourselves to our full potential, and I believe that we have an opportunity in this time in history to actually do that and to move us to a completely new direction from the one we're going. And I think without the darkness and without all of this bad stuff happening, we wouldn't have this great awakening. We wouldn't have this potential for change. So, yeah, I say bring it on, because the human spirit is never going to succumb. We will only blossom no matter how dark it gets. We will come through this with flying colours, I believe.
I do think that you're right. And that also, it leads me into another question that I have, because if I am understanding right, one of the things that you have understanding of is the word spelling, right? And how things work. And when we start talking about the human body and we start talking about the cell, it occurred to me at one point, cell is the exact same as a gel cell. And we start talking about being trapped in a certain reality. My question then comes in, because the cell itself holds enough memory, enough whatever you want to call it, to lay out stories of lifetimes in one cell. And people, before the front lobe of the brain actually comes into effect, and the humans, because, okay, so it starts when the baby's being fertilized and then born into the woman and being processed. The female creates a hormone that actually clears the brain. And then the baby is born with no memory until the age of 8, when the front lobe of the brain starts to process. Well, this cellular system is like a sponge, and so all these traumas and everything that's happening is like sucking into each cell and then repeating itself throughout the person's life. But that's not just that. It's so, to me, my question, I guess, comes down to is, when we're talking about being trapped, are we trapped within ourselves? Because we are the creators of our reality, in my opinion. And so when you take and you look at what's going on the planet, and I'm not trying to say everyone's running around asleep, but there is definitely not the mind, body, soul connection. People do not have reality of what the body is actually doing. They may know how the heart works or how the organs work, but the actual connection to the universe and how each organ is actually connected to a planetary system and vibrating and then creating the energies that are flowing and then creating reality. Am I making sense?
Well, yeah, I mean, most people don't really understand what they are. Most people think of themselves as just a lump of meat, just this biological thing that's a mistake, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's just not that way at all. I mean, you're an energetic, electromagnetic spark of consciousness. This is what you are.
Amazing.
Well, what I've discovered through meditation and through ceremony, the thing, my perspective is that this vessel, this lump of meat that I inhabit, the DNA of this vessel is tuned to a certain frequency, and it plucks a certain frequency of consciousness from the field surrounding me. It downloads into this vessel and experiences that perspective of consciousness from the perspective of this vessel. That unique view of consciousness that I have can only be achieved via this vessel that this particular spark of consciousness inhabits. But my consciousness is not local to my body. It exists in the field, the same place yours does. But your body is tuned to it's got different DNA, so it's tuned to a different frequency. It's a different antenna. It plucks
like a snowflake
frequency of consciousness. And you see the world from that perspective. But ultimately, there's only really one of us here. It's a single consciousness. The energetic stuff of the universe itself is conscious. And what is real is the space. The matter is simply divisions in space based on perception of the consciousness, what we believe is possible. When you can start looking at this and start realizing that what you believe about reality is based on your understanding of your left brain understanding, what you've been taught, what science says is possible. We don't have this energetic connection. We don't read the universe energetically because our right brain is generally closed off through all the corpus callosum shut down from all the light flickering we get. All artificial lights shut down your corpus callosum, shows your TV monitor, your computer monitor, the traffic lights, the tail lights on your car. You video any light and you will notice there's a flicker rate on it. This shuts down your corpus callosum, stops your left and right brain talking to one another, and you're trained to think in language and you're trained to think in spelling and to spell your reality, which is what you do because you look at a house and you subconsciously spell house in your head, and that's what that is. You look at yourself as an individual. You spell that in your head. What is an individual? In, divide, you all. That's the reality that you are in. You are in, divide, you all. That's the reality you're in. We're in a reality of duality and division. But it's about how else can consciousness experience itself in all of its aspects? How else can consciousness interact with itself if it wasn't in a world of duality? It has to be a world of duality so interaction can take place, so growth can happen. But it's all about energy exchange and knowing what you are. You are an energetic vessel. It is harvesting a frequency of energy, and everything you are experiencing is energetic. The fact that you can hear my voice, you're picking up this frequency that your brain is picking it up, your ear, it's vibrating in your ear, and it's sending an electromagnetic signal to your brain, which is deciphering what's happening. When you touch something, it's an electromagnetic signal that goes to your brain that tells you you're touching something. Everything you are is electric. This entire universe is electrical. It's all made of conscious energy. And once you understand that, and you begin to see that, hang on, this vessel is completely unique to itself. There is no other DNA that matches my DNA that can pluck that frequency from the field and experience the world through the eyes and perspective of Max Igan. I'm absolutely perfect at having this perspective. No one else can have this better than me. With all the flaws, any flaws I may perceive myself to have, whether I'm too fat or too short or too tall, or I've got a gammy arm or a gammy leg, or I'm blind in one eye, or I'm deaf, or whatever, it doesn't matter. It's all necessary for that particular perspective of consciousness to be viewed from the perspective that you hold. And you are perfect at having that perspective. No one can do that better than you. So with all of the flaws that you have, why would you view yourself as anything but perfect? Because no one can do what you do. You are completely unique and you are perfect at being who and what you are, no matter what that is. And when you see that in yourself and you realize it's about the experience and the growth that can be obtained from that experience and the creative potential that you have, because we're all born with equal creative potential. We may not be born with equal potential because some may be stronger or shorter or have physical defects or whatever, but we're all born with that particular creative potential for creative thought. We can all create things. Look at Stephen Hawking, all these people who have no physical control at all, that have these wonderful minds that can create all of these things. So, it's about the perspective that you hold. And once you see that in yourself and you realize your own perfection, suddenly all the barriers break down between you and everybody else, and you suddenly see the perfection in everybody, and the whole life just becomes this big wow. This is just amazing that we are here. And we can look out and see the trees and the sky and the birds and talk to each other and interact with each other and have this physicality, this physical duality experience of creative potential. It's amazing. It's absolutely incredible. So, once you view that, it's just a perspective that I offer to people, but it's really helped me to be able to view the world from that. And that's something that I got in meditation. It wasn't through the use of any substances or anything. I just had this incredible download in this meditation I had in 2008 where I was just suddenly everywhere at once, and I fell out of my chair and I cried for 7.5 hours because the experience was just too much for me to contain. And it was just phenomenal, and my life has changed from that point. And I've been able to manifest things, manifest my path, manifest my reality. I decided I wanted to be a radio host. So I put myself in the energetic state where I was a radio host, and I was a radio host within 6 weeks through nothing that I did to become one. You just got dropped
love
into
that.
So
that is my whole thing. That is really why I wanted to talk to you. It is, my whole deal is about manifesting in this reality. I was born with vision, and I can give you all these great stories about myself, and it all breaks down to this one thing, is that I know that manifesting and learning from the conscious place of this being to manifest the reality that I want to experience, as opposed to what is just going to come from this cellular structure, memory, whatever it is within the body. Like that's the breakdown that I want to understand on a very deeper level. I guess that's my search right now.
Well, the way to understand it, if I can offer a perspective on my perspective,
Yes.
It's because we're speaking languages that we don't know we're speaking. There's a film that I put out in 2009, I think, called The Awakening, where I went into this in quite detail. It's actually had over 1 million views on YouTube. Like, someone uploaded it last year and said, new film, The Awakening, which it isn't a new film. And it's had like 500,000 views, 500,000 views, just since last year. And it's like so many people have uploaded it, and collectively it's had like over 1 million or a couple of million views. But it's understanding the language of the heart. You're speaking an electromagnetic language all the time. Your heart isn't just something that pumps blood around your body. It's an electromagnetic generator. It powers the vessel that is your body. If you can think of, there's another show that I recommend you listen to, Sherri, called The Energetic Universe. I put out maybe a year or two ago. It's a radio show. You'll find it in my archives. But if you can understand, your heart is an electromagnetic generator that powers your body, and it also powers your brain via neuropeptide activity. You've got certain material in your heart that is very similar to your brain material. I would suggest that this is where neuropeptides come from. You can do this experiment yourself. If you just turn the corners of your mouth up, just smile, you feel that warm sensation up your back. That is your heart generating neuropeptides and sending them to your brain to tell your brain you're happy. So you have billions of brain cells die off every second, and new ones are born with new receptors for whatever emotion you happen to be feeling. And your brain is a quantum instrument that will take the neuropeptide activity from your heart, and it will turn possibility into actuality. That's what your brain is. It's a quantum instrument that turns possibility into actuality based on the emotional input it gets from your heart. That is how you communicate with your brain. There's actually more communication that takes place between the heart and the brain than there is between the brain and the heart.
So this
is how. Let me just continue for a minute. This is going, but this is the internal language that you're thinking. When you have a thought, you take that thought down to your heart. You imbue that thought with emotion that sends those neuropeptides to your brain, and that actuates that reality. That turns that possibility into actuality. Okay, so this is the language, the internal language, but also the external language. You live in an electromagnetic universe, and the emotional state that you are in is being spoken to the field around you, and this field is speaking back to you, and it's mirroring that emotion back to you. This has been stolen by the powers that believe they be in the mainstream, which they presented to the world as the law of attraction. The law of attraction, manifest with your brain. Think about prosperity and wealth and duality and all this stuff. Manifest in duality, and they'll come back and bite you in the ass once you've done it. But really, it's the law of mirroring. It's not the law of attraction. It's the law of mirroring by the emotional state that you are speaking, the emotional electromagnetic language that you are speaking. And this is something that is very, very neglected. But there's a conversation going on. The field is speaking to you. You hear it sometimes. It's called your intuition. Very often we don't listen to it. But that is the field talking to you. It's my belief that in places such as ancient Egypt, many of the temples that were put in place in ancient Egypt were not temples. They were books that would create a certain electromagnetic field. You walk into the temple at Abydos, for example, in Egypt, and you walk in there and you feel this incredible energy field in there. And there's these glyphs all over the wall that to the uneducated and to the uninitiated would just look like pretty symbols and pretty stories. But to the initiated, they would tell you how that emotion and that feeling, that energy that you were feeling could be harnessed and spoken. That's what a lot of this was about. It's learning this electromagnetic language and knowing that you are speaking to the field in an emotional language, and it is speaking back to you, and it is mirroring reality back to you by the emotional input that you put in there. When you have everybody who is in these biological computers that are all downloading energy from the field and not knowing it, when you've got billions of people who are putting this negative emotional energy into the field, this is what we have to work on. This is what we are downloading into ourselves. So once you know that this is going on and you are speaking this language, you can put positive energy back into that field, speak the correct language, and you can dilute the field. And it's a very, very positive dilution, and it's far, far surpasses the negative emotional energy that people put in there. So you can mirror this out yourself simply by putting yourself in the correct emotional state of not fear, which doesn't mean that you don't get angry. It doesn't mean that you don't express your emotion, you don't feel things. But it's when you're angry with someone, what are you doing? Are you doing it because you want to hurt someone, or are you doing it out of love for the person that they are hurting and need to diffuse the situation? Is it righteous anger or is it hatred? You can look at this stuff and see where you're basing your emotional responses on. And are you responding or are you reacting? It's the year of the monkey, remember. The monkey mind is going to step in. You're going to want to react, often from a negative, hateful place. This is not what you want to do. You've got to, if you're reacting or responding to something, it should be from a state of love or concern for the damage that's being done by this particular individual or this particular act. You know what I'm saying? So it's putting yourself in this correct emotional state and realize you are speaking a language all the time and you are experiencing reality through your right brain that we often can't access. But this is happening all the time. We're just not aware that we are speaking this language. But once you become aware that you are speaking it, you realize what a responsibility we all have to have the right intention and to base ourselves in the correct emotional state when we're applying ourselves to any situation.
So I'm kind of dumbfounded because I love the way that you're putting this. It's so much of what I believe to or have concept of, perception of myself because of the vision that I have. And that's just, it brings me to a question that I had when you mentioned earlier the peptides. So are you familiar? Have you heard of the scientist Candace Pert?
I know the name, but I'm not particularly familiar with the work.
Well, and the only reason that I mention her is that she's no longer with us, but she was the one who said or claimed that the peptides that you're talking about are actually not just in the brain, but they're through the entire cellular structure of our being. So every cell basically holds this receptor, and these peptides are coming in and out, and that's the trap. That's the cell that I was talking about. It's like when those receptors are open and the emotions flow through our cellular system, however that works, I don't claim to understand it. But when you have trauma or anger or whatever it is, and I think the powers that be know this, it shuts down the receptor, and that emotion, that peptide, gets trapped within the receptor, and then that's the projection, the mirror that then starts being emulated somehow, I think. Does that make sense? That
makes a lot of sense. And what shuts it down is fear. It's the fear emotion. It's the fear emotion. All of those negative things you touched on, these are all fear. It's all based on fear. So that's what I was saying. That's the important thing, is to understand what love and fear is. Love is not fear. It's the opposite polarity. So don't be in fear of being who you are. See, often we live these fearful lives. We're little cages. We're scared of everything. We go through our life in fear of death, which is the only part of life which is inevitable. It's like getting on a roller coaster and going, oh my God, this ride's going to end as soon as you get on it. And you don't enjoy the ride, So forget about that. Forget about all these fears of death and all these fears of inadequacy and all the things we're given to judge ourselves by this society. It's all fiction. It's all rubbish. If you didn't have a mirror, why would you care what you looked like? If you didn't have all these social parameters to measure yourself up to, why would life be anything more than the experience and what you can do with it and your creative potential and how to get along with others and all this sort of stuff? We've lost a lot of that. So we've got to understand that that's what this society has done. It's given us all of these artificial parameters to measure ourselves by and all these judgments to make on ourselves. And we police ourselves and we judge ourselves so poorly by all of these external parameters which are not our own. They're simply not our own. We have.
And do you think, it seems like to me too that one of the things that I see is that we judge ourselves heavily, and we're always, we're rocking ourselves, the internal, that monkey brain that you're talking about, to me, not just is, trying to get us to move in directions, and react, but it's also like that constant self badgering or whatever you want to call it. And so I wonder if I do this technique where when I can realize, I'm not saying that I'm always there, but when I can realize that I'm in it, that I'm like really feeling a negative vibration and I'm putting it out and willing to throw it up on everyone else, I just start saying peace, love, joy. I'm not saying that I immediately feel peace, love, joy, but just those words, just by saying it and repeating it over and over again until I'm either distracted or feel something different, that's worked for me. I don't know. I don't really understand it, but I know that I have to go there, because if I don't, the reflection that's going to come back is not going to be what I want.
Yeah, well, whatever works for you, I just say stop.
Ooh.
I just say stop. And I stop. And I go,
I love that.
Doing it again, stop. And it's done. Once I've stopped, I've stopped. It's okay. And but yeah, again, you can't have fear of expressing your emotions. You just, like I said, be careful of what you're basing those emotions in. Emotions can be judgmental, which is usually fear. If you're getting angry with somebody because you're judgmental of their actions, you don't think, I'm a vegan, I don't think you should be eating meat, and rah, so you're just being horrible to this person. Hang on. That's not really the way to do it, People do that. It's not good. If same with smoking or whatever, you can't be judgmental and be angry. A lot of the time it's people's fear of their own beliefs and fear of whether they're doing the right thing, which causes us to be angry with other people. I mean, sure, if you see someone beating a child, you're going to get angry. That's out of love for the child. So it's a different emotion. It's a different state. So this is what I'm saying. Don't be afraid of expressing your emotions. Just be careful of what you're basing these emotions in. What is your intention? Is it judgmental, based in fear or hatred or something that you're putting on someone else, which is usually something you're not facing about yourself, or is it out of concern and love for life? Or these are very, very important distinctions to make when we get into these judgmental states, because judgment can be needed in situations. You've got to judge what's good and bad, and whether you need to react or respond to a situation. You can call that judgment. So, judgment, there is a place for it, but you've really got to look at the emotional state you're in. Like I say, this language that we are speaking, that we've been basically taught to forget, and taught that this is fairy world. This is, fairies in the garden. This is all this new age rubbish that isn't real, but it is real. You are speaking. I mean, even if you go into a house where a couple has been fighting, you can walk into that room and you can cut the air like a knife. You know that.
Oh, yeah.
And they don't even have to say a word. You walk in there and you go, oops, I shouldn't have walked in here.
Yeah, so
that should let you know that energy is real and it is projected by the human vessel, and we can feel it and we do take it on. So this is happening all the time, every single minute of the day, with everything that you do, your intentions in all that you're doing. And people's failure to be in the now is a big part of it as well. This is what causes a lot of this fear energy, is people's constant stress over and anxiety over what exists in the future or what exists in the past, neither of which exists now, all imaginary. You've got people that are in anxiety of what may happen in the future, or in a state of stress over what happened in the past. So they're living in their imagination. They're living in a state of fear for that which does not exist now, because the past doesn't exist now, and neither does the future. So it's people's failure to be in the now, and people's failure to live their lives. People are too frightened to live. They're too frightened to die. This is the big problem. And because they're not in the now, they're in a state of stress. And they're living in their imagination, which is why they're in this state of stress to begin with. And if you're living in a state of fear or anxiety for that which doesn't exist, and none of which exists now, then isn't fear and stress and anxiety for that which doesn't exist? Well, don't we call that insanity? So really what we have is a society that lives itself according to different socially acceptable levels of insanity, which is simply not based in the now. That's the whole thing. That's the whole root cause of their problem, is that they're not based in the now. They're in their mind over that which doesn't exist, you see? So
I do. I understand that deeply. And so the argument that has come up to me is, well, how do you explain then these people that are living in poverty and this and that, and people that have no water and no food, and that are living in trash piles, and these societies and all of these other things? And to me, I guess, again, when you talk about living in a mirror, if that's what you know, what else are you going to create? But do you have a different philosophy on that?
Well, it's that as well, but it's the people that know that this is happening, that are doing nothing about it. What are they creating? The ones that are living in that situation are often very creative people, artists and musicians and people who are very creative, who simply are in their right brain and they can't function in a left brain world, and so they're discarded by the society, and the society sees them there, but it doesn't acknowledge the potential of these people, and it doesn't look at what caused the problem that created these people, which is the system itself. These people, because we've got to pay to be alive, we're in a situation where we've got to do this ridiculous thing, like collect paper in order to trade it for all the abundance that exists around us. These people aren't in a position often where they can do that. But the rest of society is, they could look at the problem that created this situation. And you can't fix it by going and put a Band-Aid on the situation and providing free housing for these people. I mean, sure, they need it, but I think everyone should have free housing anyway. I think it should be if you're born in a country, you should be able to go and build a house somewhere. You shouldn't have to pay for it. But,
well, and that brings me to the question then again of, because I felt the same way. I went through this really strong period of like being resistant of the money vibration, not wanting to be involved in the corrupt system and how it worked and the lies and deception of how it even exists. But then something hit me as far as when we were talking about energy. And money, even though it's a piece of paper, to me, the perception that I'm trying to grasp, or I'm maybe looking at differently, is that it is a means of abundance as opposed to... Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, it can be a means of abundance. It could be, but because the way money is created at the moment, money is issued as debt. So it's not a means of abundance, it's a means of scarcity, because it's an interest-based money system that's issued as debt. Your money could be a tool, and it could provide abundance. I mean, money is a form of energy. It is an energy exchange, and it makes sense to have something to barter with. We used to use tally sticks for a long time. But it's the fact that the monetary system we've got itself at the moment is designed to create scarcity. And the reason these homeless people exist is because of this system. And as the price of living increases, this is a form of depopulation through this monetary system, because it rises further and further up the food chain. And most people look at the people below them on the food chain as they're discarded and think, well, they didn't really make it. They could have done better, But then it comes for them. The prices go up and then they get discarded. Nobody's safe. It just keeps going up the food chain until it's discarded all but the essential few at the top that are working and running the system. That's what it's designed to do. It's also designed to create scarcity simply by the fact that it's debt. It's a debt-based currency. We could have a different currency. Money in its current form is very, very detrimental. The economic system that we've got is very, very detrimental.
Why do some people seem to? I mean, I'm not one of them, so this is probably why I'm asking. Why do some people seem to have money flow to them like water?
Well,
do you know what I mean? Like it doesn't seem to carry the dead currency to them. And is that it within them? Is that a trick? What is that?
It depends on who you're talking about. I mean, there's some people that come from very rich families that have got it set up so the money always flows to them. As far as like people like me, I don't have a lot of money, but I've always got it when I need it because I don't care about it. I find that if people are worried about money and they're concerned about it, then they're always going to be short of money because it's a mirror. That's what they're creating. People who don't care about money are usually pretty abundant. I don't really place much value on it. I mean, I need it. I know I need it to survive, but it isn't something that I hoard and I want and I buy things with. I just use it to travel and to alert people to the fact that we can actually do something about the world at the moment. We've got a big opportunity here. So the money that I get come in, I tend to give out, and it just sort of works to keep me doing what I'm doing. I think Spirit wants me on this path, so it provides so that I can stay on this path as long as I'm supposed to be on it. But I don't place any real value on money. It's just this thing, But it is a form of energy. But ultimately, when you've introduced money and economic systems to any country, you end up destroying the country because it ends up being in debt, and you get this terrible disease of the mind. It's like once money is inflicted over people's consciousness, they don't know how to live without it. You can go to these tribal cultures that never saw money. You go introduce money to them and get them to start trading beads and stuff with each other and pretty coins. And pretty soon they don't know how to live without this stuff. It's a very, very interesting program. I've been told that it's all based on Kabbalistic principles and things, but I'm fascinated with the way it kind of infects people's minds. If people can't imagine a world without money, I can see it perfectly how it would work. We would just all get along and things would sort of function the way they are now. Only people would probably be doing what they love, and a lot of the systems we didn't love would be automated, and that'd be fine. I can see how it would work and how we'd have much more time for philosophical and creative pursuits. But a lot of people just can't see it. They just can't see how it would work. I can, but I find it fascinating how people, once it's inflicted or imposed over someone's consciousness, it becomes their whole reality and they can't imagine life without it. Have you ever thought about that? I find it fascinating.
I've given that a lot of thought, actually, and what has brought that more into my consciousness recently is having teenagers. I have older children and then myself, and I could pretty much go without a lot of technology. I love the internet, and I use it to do the show, and I connect with a lot of great people. But other than that, I could spend a lot of time in my garden and researching and doing things that I love that don't really have to do with other people. But what I have noticed is that with the younger generations, the teenagers that are coming in, if they are not completely wrapped up in technology, they are still using it in a way that is, to me, the combination of the ancient ways and the new ways. They're creating a new way of connecting without destroying the planet, maybe.
Well, yeah, that's true in many ways. A lot of people are becoming very dependent upon technology as well, and technology's got a dark side to it simply because of who controls technology. I mean, there's nothing wrong with any technology. It's just who controls it. But what I've found is, and I've noticed it more and more as I travel, is that a lot of young kids are losing a lot of life skills due to technology. They're finding it hard to communicate with each other in the real world, face-to-face situations. And I don't know, kids that text each other from across the room, which I find bizarre.
Yes, and not just that. I mean, it's the way that even they do math, the way that they don't have to really know how to spell, the way that, I mean, there's so many aspects. But I guess the question is that, because I feel like at first I thought this is awful, and I went through this whole thing where I was like making my kids learn how to multiply, like for real. But it hit me that maybe this is their way out of the system. Do you know what I mean? This is a way that they are creating to escape and learn something different. I don't know.
Yes and no, but it's a virtual world they're living in, and if the power goes off, what do they got? You've got to have life skills, I believe. What I'm finding, because children are getting into technology so early, they're not developing in a natural way, the way they would normally. They don't really play in the garden that much anymore. They don't go out inside. We used to go outside and play till dark and stuff when I was a kid with the neighbouring kids and all sorts of stuff. Now everybody's interacting on their computers, and they're kind of, I don't know, they're changing the language, and they're changing. They're removing people of their life skills. You drop anybody, modern person, in the forest these days, not too many people could look after themselves. And all of our knowledge is becoming digital. All of our communication is becoming digital. We're becoming dependent upon certain pathways that are leading us in certain directions. And when you look at the whole transhumanist agenda, and you look at how we're becoming so dependent upon technology, I think it's kind of a worrying trend. I do. I think it's very concerning. I'm seeing a lot of, like, even the millennial children that are coming out now out of the primary schools and things are pretty empty. A lot of these kids, they don't have the normal, just not like normal children. I don't know.
Don't you think that has? I mean, I'm not trying to shift it too much, but where do the parents come in on this? Because I can tell you that, my kids don't love it, but I make them do stuff. I mean, that's...
Well, a lot of the parents, I mean, of course the parents are big to blame of it, but I mean, there's so many broken homes, and there's so much bad parenting. I mean, there really is. There's a lot of bad parenting. People have become very dependent upon the nanny state. They've been trained by television for the last 40 years to not behave in very responsible ways, quite frankly. I mean, generally, when you look at society, I mean, there's a lot of conscientious people and a lot of good parents who do a lot of good things, but overall, really, we've got a very strange society. The parents are often too caught up with trying to put food on the table and pay the rent, and just, you've got to have both parents working there, so.
But don't you think that's the idea, right?
Well, yeah,
seems like
to get the parents away from the children and
right.
get children into daycare sooner so that they're programmed by the state. So, we get what we've got,
Bam.
So, you can't really blame anyone for being in the state that they're in. You can't really blame the fact that the general IQ of most Western countries is plummeting, because it's all been
horrifying, though.
Well, it's all been done by design. But again, I mean, the people are waking up and seeing it. Just the fact that we're having this conversation and people are seeing it now. And I've met people here in Pittsburgh that have pulled their kids out of school quite early and homeschooled them, and the kids have got a far better education. So, people are seeing it. And
you almost have, I think, at this stage, if you are not or don't want your kids to be completely indoctrinated, you have to pull them out of the school system.
Well, do to a degree. You do. I mean, again, they've got to be interacting with their peers.
Exactly.
But if you're going to have them in the school system, you've got to at least educate them and help them understand that they mustn't lose sight of themselves. And the judgments that the teachers and the school puts on them are fiction. It's irrelevant. You don't really have to go along with what they say, and you should never, ever sacrifice yourself or lose sight of your own perfection. It's so important that people know that and understand that if they're going through school. And to stand their ground, really, and to ask questions. I mean, you may get in a little bit of trouble. I mean, I did that. I got kicked out of 4 schools because I used to ask a lot of questions.
But, I love that.
At the same time, I came out all right, so.
Well, and I deal with a lot because I have, I will, as the mother, I will go in and battle with the school. And in fact, now I have one of the schools that just won't call me anymore. They just are like, we've got 5 weeks left and this kid goes to another school. Dear God, please don't let her show up again.
Yeah.
But it's not because I'm evil or mean or yelling, screaming, cussing, being in any way inappropriate. It's because I feel like that there is a place where, as educators, they have a responsibility, and everybody can say, well, they don't get paid or they don't do this or they don't do that. I don't care. When you take that job and you are teaching and your responsibility is to teach my child, I expect that to be done. And it's not about, because when I go to work, if you come to my office and I'm supposed to do my job for you, I will. I'll do the very best job I can.
Well,
so
yeah.
I don't think that that's inappropriate to send our kids to a public school that we pay for and say, no, this is not like this history that they're teaching and the way that they're, oh, you know what, we're going to take a 4-minute break, and then when we come back, I would just be fascinated to hear if you have an opinion on Hitler and the whole Nazi regime, because I just read the most fascinating articles that I had no idea were even in existence until like 5 days ago. If you're available to come back for the next hour.
Look, I can probably do half of the next hour if that's okay, because I've just arrived at someone's house and they've got a big gathering for me that's gathering downstairs, and they're kind of wondering where I am, I think.
Oh, I love that they're doing that, and I appreciate that you've taken the time to meet with me and talk with me. And so we're going to just take a few minutes. Everybody can do whatever they need to, and then when we come back, we'll talk for another short time, and then you can get on with your party.
My pleasure.
Great. Welcome back. So before we left for that break, we were talking with Max Igan.
Yes, sir. Yes.
And we are discussing the different types and ways that our society is maybe evolving and generating, and also the systems that are in place, and possibly reasons that are outside of the box of our regular thought. And so I have some good ideas, or some things that I thought before were, I guess, the way that it is. And so when you had said that your perception changes regularly, I think that that is very true. And one of the things that you had mentioned, I'm sorry, I'm trying to go back through my notes and make sure that I'm hitting all of the places that I wanted to. I want to jump – actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into something that I think is fascinating because I know that we don't have a ton of time, and I want to hear about this personally, so this is where we're going to go. The divine feminine. I think that feminism is such a farce, and as a woman, it's embarrassing to me. Because I feel like that it was a plot to do what we were talking about with taking the children out of the home and getting them indoctrinated into the system. I think that women, instead of standing strong and holding their place as the Mother Earth does, right? It's like they gave up that role, and now we're seeing the effects of that. I mean, do you think that that's a part of this, or do you think that's just...
No, I do. I think that's very, very much a part of it. The feminist movement has nothing to do with divinity. That's the problem. The feminist movement was actually started by the Rockefellers.
Yeah.
And what it was about was taxing all of the population. They were only able to tax half the population before the feminist movement. They were able to tax the entire population and remove the kids from the family and get them into an indoctrination session a lot earlier by the feminist movement. The divine feminine is a nurturing, giving, caring creature. You know, the divine feminine, just a mother is the epitome of a divine feminine. I mean, this is the personification of a divine feminine. You know, like this is what divinity is. But we've seen a crushing and a squashing of the divine feminine over many, many hundreds of years. It's been done. I mean, I can trace it really way back. The beginning of the destruction of the divine feminine goes back to the brutal death of Hypatia back in Egyptian days, around about 400 BC or 400 AD, was really when it started coming into full swing, and it's gotten worse and worse since then. And there's been a real effort to bring back the divine feminine through the New Age movement and all this sort of stuff, but it's been a misconception of what feminine divinity really is, I believe. And in the process of bringing back the divine feminine, it's also there's been this huge outcry against patriarchy, the patriarchal society that we have. And really, the society that we have may be male-dominated, but it's not patriarchal, because really what is patriarchal? That is paternal, and there is absolutely nothing paternal about this society. It's not patriarchal at all, really. It's chauvinistic and it's male-dominated, but I wouldn't call it patriarchal. The same as I wouldn't call we wouldn't really want a matriarchal. You know, we've got these misconceptions of these things, you know. So, but in the bringing back of the divine feminine, we've also managed to turn the masculine, the men of this world, into little fluffy little people who are very much in touch with their divine feminine, but they've lost track of the divine masculine, and we need a balance of both. We absolutely need the feminine divinity to rise up, but we also need the masculine divinity to rise up, and you know, the warrior spirit and integrity, and to protect your family and to protect and stand up for what is right. You know,
and
that
not be
divine masculine, you know.
Well, and that's where, yes, it's like that's where it feels so frustrating, I guess, in some ways, because it's exactly what you're saying, is that the roles have somehow been so manipulated.
They are. At the moment, we've got women who are more in touch with their divine masculine, who are standing strong and tall, and we've got men who are more in touch with their divine feminine. What's going on here? You know, and the women, basically, I know women that are really desperate to find a good man because they can't find a man who is in his masculine divinity. They can find someone who's strong and who's supportive and has got a good job, but he's still got these little feminine insecurities that women don't want to be a mother to their husband. They want a man, a warrior, to care for them and to be strong for them so they can be in their divinity and be the divine support that the masculine needs, you know, the nurturing that the male needs.
And it's crazy to me that you say it that way, because in the work that I do, in the cellular somatic work that I do, in the wounding that I deal with people, it seems like, honestly and truly, at least 98% of the people that I deal with the wounding of the mother. And so it's almost like it makes so much sense all of a sudden as to the relationship is it's so off because so many people are searching for that parent that somehow got lost in the generation when the family split and when all these things started to happen. It makes sense that the genders would start being confused because there's no role models.
Exactly. That is absolutely correct. There is no role model, which is a lot of what feminism has done because it's completely separated the families from the children. And now through this economic model and this monetary system, you've got yourself in a state where both parents are working all the time and they've got no time for their children. So there is no role model. The only role model they've got is teachers, and these people are completely programmed to completely mess these kids up.
Well, and then the other problem, too, even if they're home, the parents, and I'm not trying to call people out or saying that I'm, any better, but I'm just saying it seems like at least 70% of parents, they're in their wounding. They're still, they're handing it down as opposed to making shifts or making changes. They're just giving another generation the crap that they were dealt. And so that's where I'm questioning this awakening in some ways right now is like, I'm like, okay, what's happening here when it looks like we've got some people who are really waking up, taking responsibility for the truth of whatever it is. And then you've got others that are still turning around and spinning in the same story that we've been living in for thousands of years now.
Well, you've
like
got they're not only spinning in it, they're getting deeper and deeper into it. And
yes,
that's okay. Like there's a lot of people. I kind of call them void portals, and it's okay. It's like the filler. It's like the filler in a pie or a cake. That you need there to get the bulk of the cake. You need this there for us to have the interaction, to have this. You just need it there. But the whole world doesn't need to wake up. You don't need to wake up everybody. You just need to have a percentage of the people who are awake acting in the correct emotional state in their actions and stepping out of the fear and being who they are and exercising their authority and exerting themselves as real human beings and realizing that all they are dealing with are other human beings. There is no authority. This is a fiction. We made the whole thing up. So by being eloquent and polite and saying things in the right way and simply calling a spade, you can make a huge difference and you can change the direction society's going. Most of the people, we can change the direction this world is going, and most of the people in this world will never ever know that there was even a problem to begin with. And that's just the way it is, and that's okay. So don't stress out about people who are asleep. Just be aware of the difference that you're making in what you're doing and the little breadcrumbs that you're leaving for those who follow, and perhaps for you to follow the next time you come down this path. Because I really believe we do that. We leave breadcrumbs for ourselves to follow through all of our incarnations. I'm sure that next time I come back, I'll be very attracted to the works of Maxwell Igan. I'm sure he'll resonate with me very much.
I love that.
Well, yeah, and this helps me on my path. I've left these breadcrumbs and see, this is all I do is I offer a perspective in the hope that it may help others find themselves and find some sort of peace on their path and help lead us back to a place of security and a place of surety of our future, because it's very unsure at the moment. So, but I think it's all about perspective and having no stake in the outcome of what you do. This is just a temporary experience, and my only goal here is to help change the human condition to something that I can see maybe a little bit better than where we're going, because the world is run by some very, very dark people, and I think if you have knowledge, you have to apply it to the world, and you have a responsibility to share it with people and to help people on their path. I think we could change the human condition very, very quickly if people could just wake up to themselves, and that's been my whole goal through the whole thing. I think I probably got a bit of sidetracked or whatever we were going there, but
no, I love to hear that anyway. It doesn't, this is sometimes that's what I love about this show is that it's really about the message. It's whatever is supposed to be happening, and I feel like so much of what you said is going to take me a couple of days to process, because it brought light to different areas that I have had question about. And one of the things that you had said that is really, it's still kind of pondering in me, is about the negative vibration and having fear and a reaction. Because in my rearing, it's very different than most, because it's not a big secret that I'm a witch and that I was reared Wiccan. I'm a third generation. And so in my teachings, the one rule is to do no harm. And that means to anyone, anything, ever. And so when you see an interaction, it doesn't mean not to take action. It means to step in and allow the harm to be done to you. It's almost like I don't know how to describe it, but when you said that it's like you almost gave a different definition for me of an emotion that is classified as negative by wrapping it around and putting all of these emotions into the vibration of love. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, because you can do that. You really can do that.
But I never thought of, to be honest with you, before talking to you today, I didn't have that perception. I had always, even in my work, my ideas are there are 4 emotions: mad, sad, scared, anyway. And now I'm kind of seeing that it's really, there is that separation, but it all still stems from that one. Even the biggest fear, the base, the seed, is based out of love.
Well, yeah, it can be. It can certainly be. And it's really important for people to realize that.
Pretty cool, actually. Pretty amazing.
Well,
so, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I just said thank you. I'm glad it helped. It's really nice to hear stuff like that from people.
I love that. I loved talking to you. And I know that you have a lot going on, and I really appreciate you taking the time and that you have things to do. And so you are going to head out and have the rest of your evening with people and enjoy your night.
Yeah, I've actually been just brought to a lovely little place here in Louisville, Ohio. A beautiful family are putting me up for a couple of days, and they've kind of organised a bit of a gathering downstairs, and there's kind of people accumulating to come and say hi. So and I've just kind of arrived about an hour ago, or about an hour before the show. So I kind of feel a little bit obligated to get down and mingle with the people.
I so appreciate you.
They come and pick me up from Pennsylvania, so from Pittsburgh. So.
Oh, and I love that they're doing that. I love that you're getting to have this party, and I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me and be on the show and spread your knowledge and all the things that you do every day. I think you're amazing and really appreciate you.
Well, look, it's been an absolute pleasure coming to talk to you, Sherri. I'll be happy to come on any time. I'll have a little bit more time in the next couple of weeks, and I'll be back in Peru after May, and I'll have 6 months, so you can contact me then. You have to put up with the frogs and the insects and the monkeys in the background, but ooh,
I love them. That would be fabulous.
We can do a show from Peru anytime.
Oh, I'm so looking forward to that, and I will definitely be in contact. Thank you again so much for coming on.
My pleasure, darling. Thanks very much.
Good night.
Bye-bye.